Nearly everyone on this planet has heard of Marilyn Monroe's death and the conspiracies that come with it. Was it suicide? An accident? Or was the Secret Service involved? Or maybe even the Mafia? Not quite so many people have heard of an actress that died a decade later. She too was a beautiful blonde movie star. But unlike Marilyn, Jean Seberg was openly harassed by the FBI, so severely that she lost first her baby and then her own life. Let's talk about it. Jean Seberg had a simple upbringing in Iowa, as the daughter of a pharmacist. When she was only 19 years old, Jean decided to join in on a casting call by the famed director Otto Preminger. And against all odds, the young girl from Iowa beat over 18,000 other girls and got the part. She was going to play Jeanne d'Arc in Preminger's brand new movie, Saint Jean. In the movie, the French king is full of regrets, because Jeanne got burned at the stake. The name wasn't the only thing Seberg shared with the famed heroine. Barely a decade after the movie was made, a lot of people would have regrets regarding Seberg's death too. But while this role at first seemed like a dream come true, and the fulfilling of nearly every little girl's fairy tale, the filming was horrendous for Jean. The pyre somehow caught real fire, and Jean's pained screams were left in the movie. This traumatized the young girl so much that she and her first husband fled to Paris. There, she met a group of young and rebellious actors, including Jean-Paul Belmondo, who would help Jean catch her big break into 1960 gangster movie Breathless. The French movie became a hit, and Jean became a star. Thropes of girls went to the hairdressers to get chopped short blonde hair like Jean. After the success, the young actress fell in love with the 24-year-old writer Romain Gary. They married, and in 1962 they welcomed their first child into the world, a son. It was a wild and open marriage. Both of them had countless affairs. Jean stayed in Paris during this time, and for a few years she filmed nearly exclusively in the French capital. But then, as it would turn out tragically, the call of Hollywood became too strong for Jean to resist. On the flight back to the US, she met a man by the name of Hakim Jamal. They talked through the entire flight about the political misgivings in the US. And when the plane landed, Hakim had convinced Jean to join his group, the Black Panthers, a socialist movement that fought for the rights of black people in the US. This video is not going to be long enough to give you the ins and outs of the Black Panther Party, nor to even get into their history. So I'm gonna post some links to the video in the description, so you can form your own opinion and learn about them. What's important for the story is that Jean very publicly voiced her support for them. And not only that, she also donated $10,000 to their cause. And this would unfortunately ring in Jean's end, because it put her on the radar of the FBI and its notorious boss, J. Edgar Hoover. The FBI at this time wanted to get rid of the Black Panthers with any means necessary. The US was in the midst of a Cold War with Russia. People were in a constant state of panic about communism, and the so-called Red Fear went around. All of this led to Hoover starting the notorious COINTELPRO program. He wanted to get rid of these groups with surveillance, psychological terror, and tracking. He wanted to silence and destroy them. And as Jean got out of the plane and was photographed with Hakim, she became Hoover's newest victim. If she left her house, an agent of the FBI followed her. Every time she called someone, she heard the telltale clicking in her phone. Someone was listening in. They bugged her house and found out everything about every last person she was in contact with. There was nowhere she could hide. It got so bad that Jean had to put papers on her windows to stop the FBI agents outside her house from taking pictures. Jean got panic attacks and she started having psychological breakdowns. And all of it got even worse after Jean let Jamal's family stay with her because they too were tormented by the FBI. It took until 1970 till the FBI finally got something that they could publicly use against Jean. They found out that she was pregnant. They listened in on a call between Jean and a Black Panther activist by the name of Raymond Hewitt. In it, Jean and Raymond talked about her pregnancy and the pregnancy of Raymond's girlfriend. Jean then jokingly said, "Do you know what I call you? Johnny Appleseed, because you plant your seed everywhere." The FBI interpreted this as Raymond also being the father of Jean's baby, a fatal misconclusion. Or, as some later said, they heard what they wanted to hear. And with Hoover's personal permission, the agent wrote an anonymous letter and sent it to selected Hollywood reporters, claiming that Raymond and Jean were expecting a baby. At the same time, the FBI also spread horrible cartoons about Jean and her baby, which led to a hate campaign against Jean's unborn baby. Jean couldn't take it anymore, and still pregnant, she tried to kill herself for the first time. But it didn't work. So the only solution she saw was to flee. And she did, to Switzerland. At this point, Jean was an absolute wreck, and she went into labor way too early. Her baby girl only lived for 2 days before she died, in Jean's arms. But Nina, that was what she called her, wouldn't be able to get her final rest yet. Jean knew that the FBI would never let her baby rest, unless she proved to the world that they lied. So Nina was buried in a glass casket, and Jean called reporters to attend the funeral. And finally, everyone saw that Jean's baby was as white as snow, and Raymond couldn't possibly be the father. In fact, the actual father was a Mexican revolutionary that Jean met at the set of one of her films. Jean never got over her daughter's death. She became even more depressed, and she started to get paranoid. It got so bad that during a flight, she ran naked through the cabin screaming, "They want to kill me. They abducted this plane." And finally, it seemed like the FBI let go of her, after they destroyed her entire life, of course. She never returned to Hollywood. As she later said, "Hollywood? That's dead to me." The FBI achieved what they wanted. Jean's life was destroyed. She tried to bury her pain with alcohol and pills. She met man after man that used her fragility to their advantage. Jean tried to start new in Paris, but the death of her daughter was too much for her. She tried to kill herself 7 more times after 1970, usually on the day Nina died. In late autumn of 1979, Jean left her apartment for the last time. She told no one where she was going. It took 10 days until someone found her car. In it, Jean's decomposing body. Jean was naked, wrapped in a blanket, and her body was squeezed in between the front and back seats. Next to her, police found a goodbye letter and sleeping pills. She was only 40. The police, of course, thought it was suicide. But her great love, Romain Gary, did not agree. He publicly declared that the FBI killed her. Maybe not in person, but they systematically pushed her into suicide. But 1 year later came the great shock. The French police started an investigation against Anonymous in Jean's death. It turned out that Jean had an alcohol level of 7.8 in her blood. Every single expert agreed this was impossible. Not even a seasoned alcoholic would be able to achieve this. A human passed out at an alcohol level of about 4 to 5. And Jean's liver showed she was drinking, but not to a level where she could have drunk that much without passing out way beforehand. But this wasn't the only suspicious finding. Jean's car had been the only one not covered in leaves. By the time the leaves had started to fall in Paris that fateful autumn, Jean had already been dead for at least 2 days. So someone definitely moved her car there. Till today, no one was arrested for her death. No one knows if she was killed or if someone helped her kill herself. And no one knows who exactly was involved. What is undeniable was that Jean suffered from no depression, no paranoia. She wasn't an alcoholic or dependent on pills, until the FBI entered her life. After her death, the FBI was forced to open the file Seberg. Hundreds of pages detailing that they made up horrific lies about Jean and her baby. COINTELPRO was stopped in 1971, 8 years before Jean died. But it was already too late for her by then. So what do you think? A dead person clearly can't drive a car. And every expert agreed that she couldn't have drunk that much alcohol herself. Doesn't this all also sound eerily familiar to Marilyn's death? Let me know what you think down below. I would appreciate a like and a subscribe. And I hope to see you again in my next video. And don't forget, not everything that shines is gold. Sometimes the fulfilling of your biggest dream can become your worst nightmare.